we have been speaking a lot on noise nuisance and littering, among other things. And the government has already made its position very clear that these are matters of the highest priorities, and we are going to treat them that way. So I was instructed by His Excellency to review the current framework with a view of strengthening it, increase the penalties, and also consider making enforcement easier. And I have begun that process. And let me say that we have a fairly good framework in place, which of course I will review with the intent of expanding its scope, increasing the penalties, and making easier its enforcement. But we have to begin to appreciate where we are. So I look back at an official gazette. Well, I look back at some regulations which were published in 2013 on the 16th of November 2013, regulations made under the Environmental Protection Act of 1996. They were published in the official gazette on the 16th of November 2013. And in these amendments, in these regulations rather, they are a number of pages, very elaborate, and they set out a very detailed regime dealing with littering and creating offenses in relation to littering and establishing an enforcement framework that is quite comprehensive, and we will now seek to operationalize some of these provisions. Unfortunately, they have never been operationalized, and they provide quite a range of measures that are already in the law, which we need now to operationalize and enforce. And the responsibility to do so falls directly in the hands of the President, as the President is the current Minister of the Environment. So these are regulations under the Environmental Protection Act, and I have asked my personal assistant to send it out to the press so that they can be examined and news stories can be carried about these regulations. So it deals with littering in a public place, littering in relation to motor vehicles, and it speaks to a system of fines. It deals with littering from a motor vehicle in motion. It speaks about owners of public transportation to provide receptacles for litter. It creates a series of offense for persons littering on private and public premises. Significantly, it imposes upon the local authorities a series of responsibilities and power to enforce laws and regulations, these regulations in particular, in relation to littering. It allows for the appointment in the various NDCs and local authorities, organs, wardens, who have tremendous powers to enforce these regulations, to enter into private premises, to remove derelict vehicles and garbage, to dispose of these vehicles. It grants them indemnity under the law, and it, as I said, creates a number of offenses. These wardens can take you to court and charge you. The NDCs have some responsibilities to provide receptacles for garbage. It has a whole sentencing regime that must be taken into account when these persons are sentenced. When persons are sentenced, it has powers of arrest of the wardens. So it's a very comprehensive framework, and it also brings in the police. So this will be reviewed, updated, and implemented and operationalized. So it's Official Gazette, 16th of November 2013, the legal supplement. Then, in the Environmental Protection Act itself, there is another set of regulations that were passed since the year 2000, and I want to share this bit of information with you. It deals specifically now, I have moved on from littering. Before I complete littering, we will also review the Summary Jurisdiction Offences Act and amend that legislation to expand the scope in relation to littering and to put new offenses in place, to increase the penalties, and importantly, to add imprisonment for repeated offenders, as well as add community service, which will include cleaning garbage. So the Environmental Act and regulations will be reviewed, as well as the Summary Jurisdiction Act. That's in relation to garbage. In relation to noise nuisance, we have a comprehensive regulatory framework in the Environmental Protection Act regulations that were enacted since 2000, 26 years ago. The problem here is enforcement. It would appear as though in these 2000 regulations, the EPA has to enforce them by and large. And the EPA maybe lacks the capacity to do so. We will borrow from this regime and put it in the law now, in the ordinary criminal law, so that the police can also become part of the enforcement regime in relation to noise nuisance, as they are currently. We will strengthen the legislative position, but we will be borrowing from the EPA regulations that are in place. The EPA regulation specifies the distance. It regulates the distance that you got to play music or make noise. It speaks to the level, the decibels, and it imposes a fine, and let me read it for you. It creates an offense where the person convicted is liable to a fine of not less than $300,000 and no more than $750,000, and to imprisonment for 1 year. I want to tell you, I'm emphasizing this because this is already in the law since the year 2000. So when we bring these penalties into the new regime, we are doing nothing new. Currently, under the EPA regulations, the stipulated fines range from $300,000 to $750,000 and imprisonment for 1 year. But as I said, the question is enforceability. So we will have to work on enforcing these measures. Noise nuisance and garbage are major issues in our country. And we have to accept that as decent, law-abiding, civil-minded citizens. We all live here. The environment is important. Public health is involved. Public sanitation is involved. We compromise all of that when we pollute either with garbage or with noise. And as a society, we have to take a stand. As a government, we are prepared to do so. And I hope that we'll get the cooperation from the public. This is for the public good. This is not to satisfy any segment of the society. There is no segment of the society that can be comfortable or ought to be comfortable with an uncivilized level of noise pollution or an unbearable, toxic, nasty, garbage-infested environment. If you are comfortable with that, then you should not be part of civilized society. And that is all we are saying. And we are going to also deal with motor vehicles specifically. Noises emanating from motor vehicles, from sound systems, and from the muffler or the lack of a muffler. These vehicles are required to have a silencer that covers the muffler system. They are being removed. And you can hear a motorcycle from 1,000 yards loudly. And that's a fashion. Well, that will become a very punitive crime. Because that thing is unbearable. Travel around the world and tell me where you can find a comparison in another country. And you don't have to travel far. Just go to the English-speaking Caribbean. Tell me in Barbados, in Trinidad, in Dominica, in Jamaica, in Antigua. Don't even go to America. Just go to one of the Caribbean territories and compare with what obtains in Guyana. And you must be embarrassed if you're a proud national or citizen of this country.